Here's a problem where we want to take a look at the component costs that you have in the WACC that come from your common stock. So here we're interested in the difference between the cost of equity coming from retained earnings, R sub S, and the cost of equity that comes from new common stock, R sub E. Now we have the Evanet company that is expected to pay a dividend D1, the next period dividend at $3.18. That dividend is growing at a 6% rate, so we're in a constant growth model. Common stock is currently selling for $36 per share. If they have to go with new equity, they're going to have to pay the investment banker a 10% flotation cost. So we're asked to find R sub S, that is the cost of equity using retained earnings, R sub E, cost of equity using new common stock, and what we want to do is to show what the net proceeds from common stock are for that information. So let's take a look at what we're dealing with on this. Since it's using the Gordon model, keep in mind the response in the Gordon model, which is that the price today is equal to the dividend we expect at the end of the period relative to R sub S, the cost of equity coming from retained earnings, minus the growth rate that we're going to have. So if you turn all of this around and solve for R sub S, what we found was the familiar representation of the dividend yield, the dividend at the end of the period relative to the price at the beginning of the period, plus the growth rate. Now, if we take a look at this for the problem that we have in question right here, we have a dividend of $3.18, and we're going to divide that by the current price of $36. To that, we're going to go ahead and add the growth rate of 6%. So if we put these into play, we're going to just go ahead and solve that, and it'll give us an idea of the cost of retained earnings. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And when we go ahead and deal with this, here is our answer for R sub S. We want to simply put in that expression that we had just shown here. So R sub S is again equal to the 318 divided by the $36, and we'll add to that the 6% growth rate, and that gives us 4.83%. So let me format that in a little bit better stance. We don't need 15 decimal points. So there we go. We get our first result of 14.83%. Now, the second question in there is asking us for what we have in terms of the net proceeds. So we do want to take a look at what do we mean by the net proceeds. The net proceeds are asking us, we have the price, but we want to subtract off our flotation costs. Okay, since that's what we're going to pay to the investment banker, we only get to keep this net part right here. So what we have here is a price of $36 minus flotation costs, which are 10% times the $36. So when you're dealing with this, all we're going to get is 90% of the $36 price that we have entailed there, and that'll give us the idea of our net proceeds. So we can go ahead and put that in place here, which is our net proceeds from this sale, which are going to be simply equal to the price of $36 multiplied by 1 minus this flotation cost percentage. Okay. And, excuse me, in here I'm not to make sure that I am multiplying that. And we see that, okay, in dealing, whoops, excuse me, let me try that again. 1 and 8 there. Okay. So we have a value of $32.40, and we'll reformat that to show it in currency format. So although you're selling it for $36, $3.60 is going to be paid to the investment banker, and you're just left with net proceeds of $32.40. Now, that's helpful in going to the measure that we want to have here for R sub E. So when we go ahead and put the cost of new equity in place here, and let me just subscript that. Okay, so there's our R sub E, and we'll center those, and we do want to keep it in this format. what's going to be happening here when we take a look at it is similar to what we had done up here, where you got to pay the same dividend to the retained earning shares as you are to the new shares. So when we're looking at R sub E, they're all going to get D sub 1. But what we need to be able to get as a rate of return is not to the 36 because we're not receiving that, it is to the net proceeds. So what we're going to have in here is the net proceeds would be entered in as the dividend component, and then we still have the growth rate in there. So now what this is $3.18, but divided by $32.40 here rather than the $36. We don't get to receive all of that. We just get $32.40. So it means we've got to be looking at projects that are having a much higher rate of return than we would have had previously, and we'll add to that the 6% growth rate. So when you put this in place, what you find here is, again, we're going to have the dividend of $3.18 divided by the net proceeds of $32.40, and we will add the 6% capital gain yield, and it means we better be finding projects that are returning 15.81%, significantly higher than here, to justify going out there and acquiring new money.